Is that tomorrow's verse that you're writing? 32. It's not projecting. It's chant. What's going on here? That's why is this. Someone has been playing with this one. One, two, three. Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Nami Me Namaho Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Bracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Veshatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Veshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Sri Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Nidai Gaur Brahmanandi, Hari Hari Bol. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you for being here. So we're going to continue reading the Bhagavad Gita as it is. This book is considered the essence of the Vedic literature, because it contains the essential teachings of the Vedas. The Vedas are a compendium, as we were explaining before, about what humanity needs in order to achieve perfection. Nowadays, as we know, humans are all directed, majority, Srila Prabhupada says 99.99%, trying to make money so we can enjoy. That's the idea. But the Bhagavad Gita gives us another direction. So we will discuss some of the teachings that the Bhagavad Gita is presenting here. So we have been repeating some of these things before, but now we're going to enter somewhat deeper into some of what some of the texts are explaining. So, Bhagavad Gita, how many chapters? How many verses? 18 chapters. How many verses? 700 verses. The chapters are divided into 3 sections, 6 chapters each, and each section has a particular direction. The first chapter, the first section has one target, and this is a technique that Srila Prabhupada taught, that we should remember at least one word for the whole section. So these words are very simple, in fact, simpler than what we think. So section 1, what is that word? You. You. Yeah. So what about you? What about us, you and I, all of us? So the first section of the Gita, the first 6 chapters, explain that we need to first of all understand who we are. The first instructions of the Gita are presented in chapter 2. Chapter 2, it's called Contents of the Gita Summarized. Contents of the Gita Summarized. In other words, the second chapter gives us a summary of the whole book. So it's the second longest chapter. It has how many verses? Yes, 72 verses. So the longest chapter is the last one. So generally, whenever we have to do something, what is the main concern that you have when you have to do something? Somebody tells you, hey, come on, let's do this. Yes, time. This is the age of no time. I have no time. You have time to enjoy, you have time to go to a party, you have time to go pizza, ice cream, movies, this, that. But time to self-realization, I have no time. So this is the age of no time. So in order to address or to tackle that, the Bhagavad Gita makes it very simple. One word. So the first section talks about you. Why you, we may say. Why you? Because this is how the Bhagavad Gita begins. Bhagavad Gita is presented by Krishna to Arjuna, who is struggling in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He's a warrior, and he's meant to fight. And then he realizes that his relatives are in front of him. He knew, but sometimes when you see it face to face, that's when it strikes you. It's like, oh my God, this is happening, right? This is for real. So he realized, here are my cousins, he is my grandfather, he is my teacher, and I have to fight them. That means kill them, right? Because it's a battle, it's a war, and they are warriors. So at that point, he starts lamenting. He starts shaking. I don't know if you had those experiences. You're about to go to work and you struggle just to walk in that place for whatever reasons, right? Sometimes people experiences panic attacks, anxiety attacks. They can breathe, hyperventilate. Some they feel sick because of maybe some conflict that's happening at the workplace or something that happens outside, in their personal life. I get a lot of those sort of clients in my work. And then people can't breathe. They have to go to the car, they have to go to the park, and they just don't know what's happening. They lost control of themselves. So Arjuna had one of those moments. He panicked. And then he told Krishna, I don't want to fight. I can't do this. So he starts lamenting. The very last verse. So you mind taking this mic? And can you help us with the reading? Since you have the Bhagavad Gita right there. Okay, so you have to look for the last verse of chapter 1, text 46. So in that chapter, and in that particular verse, we can say, because everything is summarized, so in that particular verse, one word, remember our technique to simplify our study is one word. And just like this whole section, 6 chapters, we can simplify it or use one word to remember the whole section, the whole 6th chapter, and that word, it's you. Yeah? That's simple for 6 chapters. Now, each of the chapters also has one word. You mind reading the last verse? This is the last verse, text 46, from chapter 1, which is titled Observing the Armies in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? What's the full chapter title? Observing the Armies? Or is that the summarized version? Let me see in the beginning. Yeah, that's to summarize. Serving the armies on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in the first verse. Okay, so text.
Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief.
Okay, Sanjaya is somebody who had television. Is that television? You know, not the television, the plasma screen. Television. Tele means far. So he had the power. His guru, Srila Vyasadeva, had given him the power to see things from distance. That's called television. Tele is far. So he was describing what's happening. It's like from here to, I don't know, Tweets or something like that, Gold Coast or further. This is what's happening there. He could see, and he's describing to the blind king Dhritarashtra. If you read the first verse, you have the first verse there? Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma chetre kuruchetre samaveta yujutsavaha mam ekam pandavas chaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. So in Sanskrit, it is explained in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita that in that location, it's called Dharma Chetra, or a religious place or a pilgrimage place, this war, it's going to happen. And if you have the chance to go to India, and I encourage you to do so, go to Kurukshetra. It's very, very beautiful, the experience. And the current Prime Minister of India had developed the area quite nicely, have been there many times, for many years. And you know, India, sometimes some places are quite run down, and you go to these holy places, and you read about them, and then you expect something really nice and developed as we see in the West. But because of the population and because of mismanagement, etc., different places, they are very run down. And you externally, because I don't have spiritual eyes, you may feel disappointed. But the last 2 times I went to Kurukshetra with my wife, it was just very, very developed. You have the same tree under which it is said Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita. And Kurukshetra is all over, and we have couple of beautiful temples there. One is built in the front. You can see the chariot that Krishna was driving for Arjuna. And it's a gigantic thing. It's unbelievable. Very, very beautiful. And then the whole town is comparatively quite nice. So everywhere you go, there are museums, there are things like that. So after spending a few days, you become quite acquainted with the history of the Bhagavad Gita and how this lineage of saintly kings or righteous people live there, and what's the story of each of them and their son and their son and their son, and how is this great dynasty of the Pandavas and the Kurus came to rule the world. So, the first verse in English.
Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do?
So that's how the Gita begins. The king asking, my sons are there, and the sons of my brother, Pandu, that's his brother, who had passed away, are about to fight. Tell me what's going on. That's how the Gita begins. So when this situation became manifested, Arjuna lamented. Yeah, the last verse that you read, 46, yeah, it says lamented. Do you mind reading it again?
Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief.
The grief. So in the last, because the Bhagavad Gita is given in Sanskrit, and if you read in Sanskrit, the last line of the last verse, text 46, the last line, can you give it a go with the Sanskrit?
Evam, is that
No, the last one, Shoka.
Shoka?
46.
Oh,
Are you in 46?
yep. Sanjaya,
No, the last line in Sanskrit.
the last line. Oh, sorry. Visrijaya, yeah?
No. Shoka, there are four
Oh,
lines.
Shoka Samvigna Manamasa.
Manasa. Shoka, samvigna manasa. So shoka means, what's the translation of shoka? You have it there? Lamentation. So that is the philosophical context of the Bhagavad Gita. And that simple word, shoka, or lamentation, is the resultant state of mind or consciousness of the living entities in this material world. Sooner or later, we all will lament. Right? Yes? Is that 100% mortality rate? Yeah? Right? So when that happens, when we're about to pass on, we lament. I had a conversation this morning with a couple of parents who they lost their son, 19 years old. So they were devastated. So they contacted me and we had a good 50 minutes discussion, and somehow they, by Krishna's mercy, they were inspired to try to turn this around and make it a beneficial experience rather than a depressive one and a scarring and traumatic one. So that's how the Gita begins, the lamentation of Arjuna. So what is the one word for this section? You. Why? Because you and I, we all lament, sooner or later. And when we lament, that's when the Bhagavad Gita kicks in, literally. Right? When we're having fun, who cares? Fun is there. Let it continue as long as we can enjoy it, not a problem. But when suffering comes, then we start asking, why me? Have you had that realization? Why me? Why he had to go? Why she had to go? Etc. So that's section 1, lamentation. Now, section 1 begins towards the end, shall we say, of the first chapter. And throughout the different chapters of that section, Krishna explains how, first of all, we can get out of that lamentation state. How do we get out? So, for example, in the second chapter, where Krishna begins his teachings, the first thing that Krishna talks about is, what is the first thing that Krishna talks about? Gunamani. Prabhu. More or less. The body. We are not this body. The first lesson that we receive in the Bhagavad Gita is, we can say, an affirmation. Right now affirmations are very popular. They have been for some time now. So what is that affirmation? We are not the body. We are not the body. Right? And the Vedic system of learning help us with what we call sutras or formulas or maxims. So in English, we are not the body means a lot. If you go to a hospital, I used to work in hospitals, and sometimes I go to hospitals. Just, a month and a half, my wife hurt her wrist. So we were there in the emergency department. And I was just thinking that, everybody who enters is concerned about what? The body. Or somebody. Right? Their body or somebody else. Everyone is concerned about our bodies. Yeah? And we were also concerned about, how bad it was or how broken it was, all swollen. So, the first thing that the Gita says, we are not the body, right? And then we have a section, a whole section, I believe is nearly 20 or so verses. And can maybe somebody read? Can you read? We can take turns. Can you read from chapter 2, text number 11, if you don't mind?
Sanskrit or English?
English, just English.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "While speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead."
Remember what was the last word that we read from chapter 1? What was the last word? It was one word. Lamentation. In Sanskrit, who remembers? Shoka. Shoka, all right? A little Sanskrit is always helpful, okay? So he's lamenting, and Krishna is answering, there's no need to lament. You're talking big words, but you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Because the body, Krishna will explain, it's like cloth. Sometimes, who of you remember how many sets of clothes you have in your life? No one, right? Too many. Right? You don't even remember. So in the same way, the clothes are disposed and the body are disposed at the end of life. So he says, why are you lamenting for something which is not worth of lamentation? Are you there in 12?
Yeah. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be.
So the message there is, we are eternal. Okay? So this section that you will start hearing from now, if you don't mind reading, it's all about the difference between the body and the soul. The body dies, the body is temporary, but we are eternal, we are permanent. And Krishna continues.
As the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change.
Good. Next.
O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress, and is steady in both, is certainly eligible for liberation. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. That which pervades the entire body you should know to be indestructible. No one is able to destroy that imperishable soul. The material body of the indestructible, immeasurable, and eternal living entity is sure to come to an end. Therefore, fight, O descendant of Bharata. Neither he who thinks the living entity the slayer, nor he who thinks it slain, is in knowledge, for the self slays not nor is slain. For the soul there is neither birth nor death at any time. He has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable, kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies. giving up the old and useless ones. The soul can never be cut to pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can be neither burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. If, however, you think that the soul, or the symptoms of life, will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. All creating beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all.
Okay. Oh, the next one, 30. Sorry.
O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in this body can never be slain, therefore you need not grieve for any living being.
Jai. So, do you see the connection? The last word of chapter 1, shoka, lamentation, right? So, Krishna is addressing that concern. You're lamenting for the body, so you should not lament for the body. That sounds somewhat heartless, we may say, right? I was talking to these parents and they were grieving for their son that 2 months ago passed on. And of course I had to give the same message, but with certain words, so it won't be considered harsh or inconsiderate, insensitive, right? So I said, after they spoke and sobbing a little, I said, well, as you know, because they are practicing, they are newer in the process, but they are practicing. So I said, I got good news for you. The first good news is that your son is not dead, right? So they sort of, yeah, we know, it's true. But it hurts. The attachment of the body causes pain. So how we turn this coin that is giving us so much grief, turn it around and make it somewhat a beneficial experience. And there are ways to do that. That's explained further in the Vedic system. So as you can see here, these are the examples that Krishna gives. Krishna uses in the Gita some techniques for teaching, and one of them is analogies. And in the second chapter, I believe, is the chapter where we find the most analogies, right? And these analogies are like postcards. You know, like in the good old days, whenever you travel, right? You bought a postcard and then you send it like that. Now that doesn't happen. I don't know. I don't think so. But now things are so modern that you just take a picture and send it. It's different. But the idea of this is to create impressions in our mind. So one of the analogies is the cloth. That these analogies also help us to remember the philosophy, right? You change clothes every day, right? So every time you change clothes, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says about the body being compared to a set of clothes. That you are changing, constantly changing, yeah? Like that. Another analogy is this one. It goes early, actually. Do you remember that one? Which one is it?
The appearance and disappearance, or like winter and summer season?
Yeah. So summer, some of us who love the heat, right? Some others love the cold. But whatever it is, they come and go. Is that correct? Now, as you can see these last few days, it's getting warmer. Yeah? Everything's changing. It's like, the nature is kind of vibrant with the heat coming. But it's going to go. There's another analogy. I don't know if it's further, this one. But in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, we find all these analogies. That sometimes the Vedas, the Vedic knowledge or spiritual life, you can say, sometimes becomes very attractive. Have you realized how beautiful this place is? Right? And people are always nice and smiling and everyone offering you food. It's like heaven. Right? Those concepts of heaven, yeah? I have lived in places that they are not like heaven. Yeah? This place is like, it's a heavenly, Everyone kind and nice. Everyone chanting some mantra, doing some yoga, doing some karma yoga, volunteering, cleaning, gardening, right? You just go around the farm, it's just beautiful. So what happens? There is a warning. And what's that warning? Krishna explains in the Gita that sometimes the spiritual life, it's, how can we say, becomes like a materially very appealing, very, very, what's the word? Help me out. You become complacent. Everything's so nice, right? What's that? We take it for granted, yes, because it's sense, the sense gratification level. It's the music, the festivals, music, incredible. I mean, I don't know. I have been in many places, many festivals, and some of the festivals here are just incredible. Janmastami, Prabhupada I was watching online because I was working. But Radhastami is coming, Lord Balaram. And some of those kirtans, you can just like, oh my God, stay for hours and hours now. And then you walk out and people coming to you with plates of cakes. I have in the fridge, I have a container, not for me, my stepson, of, 6 or 8 gulab-jans floating on charanamrita, which is a mixture of all the ingredients that were offered to the deity for the bathing ceremony, floating there. I told him yesterday, are you going to eat this someday? He says, I will eat them one by one. And has half a bucket of sweet rice. Sweet rice, right? So much. Even for free. I mean, yes, we do some service and we may give some donation, but where in the world you will have such things? Purely vegetarian, blessed by very well trained priests and cooks and Brahmins like that. So what happens is that sometimes we may think that, oh, this is not too bad. This place is actually quite good. I want to stay. We forget that everything in this material world has an end. Right? And now we may be enjoying, but at some point that enjoyment is going to be stopped because the body through which we enjoy, and we suffer also, it's going to end. Right? So that's the warning that it's given in the Gita, that don't become enamored by the flowery words of the Vedas. This body has an end. And sooner or later, we're going to end up like Arjuna. In the last verse, the first word of the last Sanskrit line, what was that word? Shoka, correct. The best way to remember things? I'm researching that. Is what's called active recall. And if you constantly ask yourself, what was that word that we were reading yesterday? Shoka, which means lamentation. Where? 146. Who spoke that? Sanjay is describing Arjuna. Like that. So you ask yourself. Another wonderful analogy that is given. I don't know if you can, you're expert reading. Do you do this professionally? You should, do audiobooks and recite the whole Bhagavad Gita. Many people will like it. Maybe we should do it. Can you read text number 70, please? This is one of my favorite analogies. And this is summarizing. Of course, we're trying to get the essence, because there are so many things just in second chapter. And all these beautiful comparisons and examples that Krishna is giving. And this particular one, are you there?
17?
Yeah, 70. Let's hear what Krishna has to say. 70. Especially for some of us that, with all due respect, may be a bit of a beach bum, that we like to go by the beach and enjoy the ocean, and right? We proudly say, yeah, I love the beach. My Guru Maharaj told me this. He's a beach bum. Anyway, this is one for us. Every time you see the ocean, see what Krishna says about this. Please.
A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires.
Okay, so the ocean is compared to someone who is transcendentally situated. And just like the Tweed River, and I don't know the geography around here so well, but many other tributaries, other rivers are, flushing into the ocean. And the ocean is there. It has high tide, low tide, basically it's there. Normally, generally. So in the same way, this is compared to the transcendentalists, who, although would have desires of different kind, but it doesn't become disturbed. A person who's not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still. Rhymes that, huh? Which is ever being filled, but it's always still. Can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Okay, this is an important point that is bringing us to the springboard of the second chapter towards the third chapter. We have asked this question several times. What is that everyone is looking for? Peace. There you go. So this is what Krishna is addressing here. Why? Because without peace we cannot be happy. Think about a time when you were happy but you were not peaceful. Generally doesn't work. The only way that you can be happy is first to be peaceful. I got 3 kids, although they are grown up now, but I cannot be happy if I know that they are in trouble. Some injury or some trouble or whatever. I cannot be happy. Huh? So in the same way, Krishna is explaining that this is a psychological phenomenon, but it has a spiritual roots, that if we don't have peace of mind, we cannot be happy. And why happiness? Because what was the first lesson of the Gita? Yeah, shoka, lamentation. But in answering that, what does Krishna say? You said it before. We are not this body. Okay, we are not this body. Okay, if we are not the body, then what are we? That is the real question, right? If we are not the body, what are we? Can you go to 2:13 and be ready for the purport, though? Prabhupada will answer that, but I want to hear your contributions. If we are not the body, what is that we are? What is our identity? Anyone? The soul. Okay. And what is the soul? Part and parcel of the Supreme. Yeah, that's like textbook. Yes. What else? Anything else? Eternity. Eternity, is it? Energy is an energy, energetic part and parcel of the Supreme. Okay. Infinite. Servant. As active energetic, serving, anything else. Huh? Indestructible. Good. That's clever because Krishna says that. Okay? So, the Vedic system has a technique, explains the opposite of what is truth in order to reaffirm or to contrast the opposite of what is being explained. Right? Night and day, for example. No? There is an analogy that is it's like night and day. So contrasting. At night you cannot see anything or much. Then when the day comes, you can see everything. When the sun comes up, like that. So in the same way, sometimes the Vedas explain something which is the opposite of the truth. In this case, we are not the body. So that's one mantra. We are not the body. We are not the body. Oh, I hit my toe. Or toothache. I'm not the body. It hurts, but I understand that I'm not the body. So okay, we're not the body. And then what is that we are? Spirit, soul. So, Srila Prabhupada gives us an insight into this knowledge in 213 purport.
Since every living entity is an individual soul, each is changing his body every moment, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as a youth, and sometimes as an old man. Yet the same spirit soul is there and does not undergo any change. This individual soul finally changes the body at death and transmigrates to another body. And since it is sure to have another body in the next birth, either material or spiritual, there was no cause for lamentation by Arjuna on account of death, neither for Bhisma nor for Drona, for whom he was so much concerned. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old to new ones, thereby rejuvenating their energy. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering according to one's work in life. So Bhisma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have spiritual bodies in the next life, or at least life in heavenly bodies for superior enjoyment of material existence. So in either case, there was no cause of lamentation. Any man who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the supersoul, and nature, both material and spiritual, is called a dhira, or a most sober man. Such a man is never deluded by the change of bodies. The Mayavadi theory of oneness of the spirit soul cannot be entertained, on the ground that the spirit soul cannot be cut into pieces as a fragmental portion. Such cutting into different individual souls would make the Supreme clavable or changeable against the principle of the Supreme Soul's being unchangeable. As confirmed in the Gita, the fragmental portions of the Supreme exist eternally, sanatana, and are called kshara. That is, they have a tendency to fall down into material nature. These fragmental portions are eternally so, and even after liberation, the individual soul remains the same, fragmental. But once liberated, he lives an eternal life in bliss and knowledge with the personality of Godhead. The theory of reflection can be applied to the supersoul, who is present in each and every individual body and is known as the Paramatma. He is different from the individual living entity. When the sky is reflected in water, the reflection represents both the sun and the moon and the stars also. The stars can be compared to the living entities, and the sun or the moon to the Supreme Lord. The individual fragmental spirit soul is represented by Arjuna, and the Supreme Soul is the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. They are not on the same level, as it will be apparent in the beginning of the 4th chapter. If Arjuna is on the same level with Krishna, and Krishna is not superior to Arjuna, then their relationship of instructor and instructed becomes meaningless. If both of them are deluded by the illusory energy, Maya, then there is no need of one being the instructor and the other the instructed. Such instruction would be useless because, in the clutches of Maya, no one can be an authoritative instructor. Under the circumstances, it is admitted that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord, superior in position to the living entity, Arjuna, who is forgetful soul deluded by Maya.
So, Srila Prabhupada presents one, the eternity of the soul, the similarity in that context with the Supreme Soul, but at the same time presents the difference. So we are one and different. We are one in quality, we're spirit, so that's why it is explained we're part and parcels. We're Brahman, energy, that's the name of the energy, spiritual energy, but he is the supreme individual and we are the minute or infinitesimal individual. So the example is given in the Vedas that there are two birds. Can you explain the... Jai. So that's, in summary, some of the most confidential parts of the Vedas. But generally that doesn't happen. So Gunamani Prabhu was explaining that two birds, one bird is enjoying, and the bird is forgetful of whom everything, or to whom everything belongs. And when he gets frustrated, so when he starts lamenting, that's why lamentation is the key philosophical concept that gives us a framework. We operate from suffering, from lamenting, into bliss and eternity. Right? Why? Because it doesn't matter how hard we try to enjoy material nature, we will be frustrated in our attempt. Even in the best of best cases, at some point, your vehicle to enjoy life will cease to exist, and that is the body. And when that happens, we all lament, we all cry, we all regret, and that's the reality of material life, right? Although we may disagree with that, we may think, no, I'm not afraid of death. So many times I got people, when I was doing books or chanting Harinam, distributing prasadam, preaching, I'm not afraid of death, right? And in our Gita study group that we are running on the weekends, we are presenting for the participants to address a famous professor, an American professor, that he's about to die. And he has written books on death and so many things, and he's about to die. So it's an interview or a little documentary, 20 minutes, and he's crying because he doesn't know what to do with his imminent death. He's missing his wife, who he saw dying a few years back, and his future is unknown. And it's just like how can I say, like a personification of the things that Srila Prabhupada presents in his purpose. that such an exalted person, many, many books, professor, PhD on this and that, but he doesn't know the basics of existence, which is the first section of the Bhagavad Gita. Who we are and what we are not. And the aim of that is self-realization. That is the purpose of these first 6 chapters. And if we understand that, of course there are other 2 elements that we are meant to conquer. Where do we come from and where are we going? But if we can conquer that, then at least 1/3 of our life is perfected. To know that we are a spirit soul, that we are not the body. Okay, we stop here, trying to honor time. We started a little late, so any questions, any points, any reflections? No? What is your name?
Rebecca.
Your name?
Rebecca?
Rebecca, okay. Any question? Rebecca? Fire it away.
I don't know if I have any questions, but I guess if someone were to ask, like, what would be the most important chapter to read from the Gita, what would you say?
That's a very important question. We have that question in our exams, right? What is the most important verse of the chapter? And the answer is this. First of all, read all the chapters. And then choose one. What would be your favorite chapter? Yeah. Chapter 9, I was thinking that. The chapter of love, supreme love. Yeah, I like chapter 9. But it's hard because practically every chapter is intriguing and so interesting, you know. And at some point, this is the thing, that different from other books, I won't say every book, mundane book, but in the Gita, all the chapters have a connection. And when you read in association, then you see that the topic of, let's say, love or pure love, which is the main teaching of the 9th chapter, which is the pinnacle of the Bhagavad Gita, it's everywhere, but sometimes it just shines a little bit. In chapter 9 has a spotlight, and that's why it's so attractive. But in chapter 18, towards the end, yeah, chapter 12, devotional service, the description of those lovers of the Supreme, right, and many others are different. How can we say? Instructions that point at that. This is the best, you know. So I would say chapter 9. I also go with you, but depends also on the level of advancement. Because if somebody's really, really suffering, read chapter 2, right? Yes, that chapter really gives you a good blast of information about why am I suffering in this material world. Now, if we want to control the mind, for example, what's the chapter for that? Chapter 6, Dhyana Yoga, the yoga of meditation, mind control, chapter 6, right? If somebody's dying, if we are concerned about death, and we see that somebody's about to die, what is a chapter that indicates how to die spiritually, or how to spiritualize our death? 8, attaining the Supreme, right? So it depends on what we need, right? When you go to the supermarket, I don't want to make a mundane comparison, but you go where you can find the things that you need, right? So the Bhagavad Gita, in one sense, is like that. Now, if we clear our mental struggles, if we are not so concerned about dying, but living with a higher purpose, chapter 9, I would say, and some other sections that talk about love, because love, or bhakti in Sanskrit, is the highest manifestation of the soul. And that's why, right, like some of the acharyas of this age used to say, all you need is love. Yeah. That's why love is such a thing. I love this, I love that. Because it's a natural thing for the soul to manifest love. But love in this material world becomes distorted because of the material conception. We think I am the body, I can love somebody, and it's all about bodies. But bodies are meant to die. In India they say that when the lizards tick, it's like all sages confirming what someone says. It's a what do you call, village saying. So that is the problem, that we are thinking this is the body, but the first lesson of the Gita is what? We are not this body. That's where we start understanding things as they are. Okay, so this is just the beginning. As you can see, chapter 2 is filled with so many nice instructions. We haven't even shown half of the analogies, but there are beautiful instructions that can give us a very practical sense of how to utilize this knowledge in our day-to-day life and live basically a better life. That's all what it is. How can you live a better life with a spiritual consciousness? Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Next class on Thursday. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you.